Hello,
What
hello.
up?
What's up?
What up? We're back, mofos.
It does feel like it's now.
Eventually,
Yeah, it's been a little
you will
while.
unmute,
You're
but hello.
tuned into
There I am. Hello.
Bobby's Cryptid Corner. We are in the heart of summertime, and we're covering what reeks of summer: sunshine, ungodly heat, and water. Right, water. Is that why we chose all these water
lakes.
monsters we've been doing lately?
Yes, that's exactly what we were doing. It is the time for, well, it's the end of summer now because we're into September. So this is like our last hurrah of the
Getting
water
into spooky
cryptids before
season.
we get exactly
Yes.
into spooky season, extra spooky season. So this is our last of it. And this one's kind of a doozy. This is like, although a lake monster, the more you dig into it, the more you realize it's more than one lake monster, but they all have the same name, and there's multiple lakes called Devil's Lake all over.
Yeah, this is a 3-for-1 episode right here.
We're going coast to coast
together.
Coast to coast.
Sort of.
Better than doing like 600 different versions of a Devil's Lake monster,
Right?
right?
That's true.
No, for
We don't
sure.
want to. Yeah, I agree.
And I
Just
think
ladder,
that
one fell swoop.
we'll all see that, maybe there's a common thread, maybe there's a reason for that, and that's kind of, I think, be part of the discussion.
Absolutely.
The name itself seems to have something to do with this.
Yeah. Is there any new announcements, or should we jump right into it? Anything new with you guys?
No, I'm still poor and my life is boring.
Same.
Not poor. My life
yeah,
is
me
not
too. That's
boring,
it.
but I'm very busy.
I'm drinking an old fashioned on a Tuesday.
I'm
night.
drinking a cup of tea.
It is
I
Tuesday.
put me a
booze.
Starbucks.
I realize I don't drink during the week unless we're doing this, which is good. And we haven't done that.
That is good. That's
I've done
that's
this every
very
other
good.
week.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
I don't drink a lot. I mean, I should rephrase.
Oh, got you. I was gonna say, not even a beer, not a nice
Maybe
little
one
white
after work
wine.
and then call it good,
Yeah,
Right.
it's like
I spent the
my
weekend in Lake
equivalent-
Tahoe and I drank. And I
have-
gambled. And I drank and I gambled and I gambled. and I
I
drank.
have the equivalent of like my drink is like I smoke a joint when I come home. The minute I walk through that door, I roll a nice big doobie and vibe super hard. Mm-hmm. right,
Well,
let's get
before we
into
jump
it,
into it,
please.
let's real quick shout out early
right.
arrivers. White Nightmare, White Mare, Nightmare,
Nightmare.
Hyde, thank God, hides in long grass again. I thought we'd lost him since we haven't been here, been on so long. Of course, Enzo, we can always count on Enzo. I think there's been maybe 2 episodes that Enzo wasn't in the chat on, and that's
very rare.
Yeah, it's very rare. God bless Michael Gutierrez. Jake Smith is here. Gob Stappa, my boy Joe 5D, and Beefy UAP. That's a new name for me. Are you guys familiar with Beefy
Nope, that's
UAP?
new. That's new.
Oh, welcome. All right.
You finally got one
that's
right,
it.
Bobby.
What?
I'm so
Oh yeah, I'm
proud of
always
you.
like, that's a new person. Like, we know that dude. His name's Bill.
Mm.
You're like, just
Exactly.
hung
I
out with
love
him
it.
last week. I'm like,
I bet that is somebody we know. They just changed the name.
Okay,
Probably.
but Rar, I love it. It reminds me of like the old emo days. Everything's
Oh,
like
yeah, for sure.
yeah,
you
the old emo days.
know?
Today.
Still
Back in
holding
the
on to
day
it. Still holding on to it.
juicy
We're
track
still
suits.
poor and boring. Yeah. Well, let's not waste
get
any
into
more
it.
time. Not that shout outs are a waste of time, but if we have nothing to talk about, there's no reason to force it. Let's get into the meat and devil's potatoes.
Ooh, I like that. Devil's potatoes.
I don't even know where that came from. Okay, let's break
It
down
sounds
this here. Bree, this is not a flattering photo of you jumping
No,
out of
but
a boat.
I like it.
So cute.
I do too.
You guys notice Tony way in the
Very.
back fishing?
Yeah, he's vibing.
Like,
I
I
love
can't help
cars
save
swimming.
you,
Like,
from the monster. Look how ripped in tone I am.
yeah, you're looking on par.
accurate.
You're looking on par.
I
then,
think
yeah.
that Bree
As
gave
I
me a
know.
floating device because if she didn't, I would try to drown myself.
Yeah.
Exactly. I was like, no, we're not suicidal today, ho.
Not
All
today.
Get into it.
For real?
Our
No.
what? I listen. Do you guys know Jamie? Do you know what it's like when Jamie likes to try to drown herself?
No,
Yeah. When I drink,
Not
I try to
into
drown myself
water.
because I think it's funny. Yeah.
Too many
She
monsters in
thinks
the
it's
water.
funny. Anyway,
Does that
our
make Jamie a
hazard
cryptid?
is
Yes.
kind of weird today because I feel like it's a medium high risk. You could either die or maybe you could live. It's like, maybe if it's lurking at the bottom of the lake and you're just like fucking around, maybe it'll leave you alone. But if you have a little canoe, you never know. Maybe if the breeze hits just right, it's gonna pop up and get you.
So this is an arbitrary risk. We're just guessing here. We don't really have
I give
much
it
to
a
back this up.
50-50. I give it a 50-50.
By looks alone. Looks alone. All right.
Looks alone, I mean, like, I would like to have that as a pet.
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
kind of cute.
And this,
It's like me,
This
hit
is-
me.
this is like the hardest thing. No, and I think we're definitely going to get into this as the episode, especially in the next slide. There's so many different sort of variations, and I think it's also because we have to remember, like, when someone sees something super crazy, especially if it's a lake monster or a sea monster, you can just see a part of the creature and it can look like so many different things. It could be a tail, but in that split second, your mind could think, oh no, that's like there's tentacles on that. Or maybe there's a fin, and your mind, like in the split second, is like it had a bunch of different spikes on it, had a bunch of different fins on it. I think that it kind of, you have to remember that these are kind of the human mind's explanation for things. And I think when you just look at something from a split second, especially if you have panic in you, if you're in that moment, your brain fills in.
You know what that
Mhm.
reminds me of? Reminds me of Bob Lazar looking through that window for like half a second, where his brain's filled in what he thinks he saw.
I don't agree with you, Kari.
Are we Bob Lazar skeptics on this show?
Or not, just Kari.
Hmm.
So the stats here, the overall explanation is kind of all over the place. It could be a slender neck, which seems to be most of the time, 50 to 60 feet, although I have heard of longer, maybe 70 to 100 feet. Head like a snake, and other times depicted as a straight serpent body, kind of like the Loch Ness. We think of a serpent creature, and other times seen with tentacles and kind of more of an octopus type of creature. But again, like if we were to exile this head right here in the center and you just see like all the different parts of it, you might think octopus
Or
even though it's
Fitch.
like a dragon.
Kraken.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
I think
let's
that
not blow the load here on what it could be.
right.
But yeah, Jamie, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that what Bree is really alluding to is the fact that our minds, when we see something quickly, our minds jump to conclusions of what we think it is. So it's not to say that there's all these different creatures or all these sightings, or there's like 10 different animals of cryptids inside of each one of these lakes, but more the idea of like they're seeing something and their mind is just filling in the rest of it. So you have a lot of spotty descriptions of it.
And then if you want to spice up the story to make sure your friends, find it interesting, I think everyone's kind of guilty of or vulnerable to that. And it's not a intentionally deceitful thing. It's like, yeah, dude, it had like spikes and like big fangs and red eyes. It was crazy. And you just want to entertain your pals. And, it goes on and on through the ages and becomes what this weird likely AI generated photo is on the internet.
How dare you, Bobby? That's a totally real depiction.
I'll give everybody
A
a good
water
example of the
dragon.
brain. So like today I was driving to work and then there just so happened to be in the road like a white cart with wheels and shit on top of it. And as I was driving, I really didn't notice it until I almost came upon it because I was just kind of like, I drive my same route every day to work. I wasn't really like, looking for something in the middle of the road. But at first, when I first saw it, all I saw was like a big white flash in front of me, and then I swerved out of the way, and then I didn't know it was a cart. You know what I mean? Like when I first just saw it, I just thought like a big flash of white. It could have been a fucking polar bear for all I knew. But like I didn't even, my mind didn't even register what it was. And unless I like looked back in my rearview mirror and saw what it was, I'm sure that I would have came up with a billion different things of what actually was in the road.
Well, yeah, and I
What
think
was
it's
it?
something quick.
It's just a cart
In
with
this
some
case-
tires on it from like a homeless person. They left
Oh,
it
a
in the road.
cart. I think you said a carp,
Yeah.
like a fish.
No cart. No cart.
I got water on the
There was
mind.
a fish on the road.
Just a fish.
It could happen.
Actually, listen, we've had
Right.
floods here, so it's possible.
That's what I
That's true.
hear. I'm just saying, when you see something really fast, especially something like this, where there's many different parts of the creature, it's easy to then link it to other animals, which maybe it's not.
Couldn't
You know what
agree
I'm
with you more.
I want to chat in the thing, but it won't let me on YouTube. Weird.
It won't let you. You have to open up YouTube.
Okay,
It
so
is
like
open.
we kind of said, the Devil's Lake monster kind of spreads across multiple states. Multiple states have a Devil's Lake. We have Lincoln City, Oregon. We have the Devil's Lake in Wisconsin, and we also have Devil's Lake in North Dakota. These
I think there's actually one in Minnesota as well.
for real.
shit.
Well, then maybe they just don't have a monster associated, which would be crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's worth pointing out, Bree, that, and I'm sure you are about to, but like, this is not to insinuate this is necessarily the same exact creature. They just share a name and very similar
Mhm.
lore to the local
Mhm.
area.
Yeah, it's not like
Mhm.
there's it's not like we're gonna allude to there's an underground tunnel and it's all the exact same thing.
Right.
But
Or it
that's a
could be.
I mean, that's always a possibility, but I think realistically, like, I don't think any of us are really coming to that conclusion. We have, I think, a lot
Right.
bigger ideas about what's going on here.
Yes.
Well,
and
there are differences.
if you can see though, Jake, since you said there's one in Michigan, I mean, really, the Devil's Lake isn't too far off from Michigan. So if there is like a little connecty woo woo from the water to that lake, maybe it is the same creature.
Maybe.
Just saying.
But probably not. It's probably
maybe-
not a creature at all. But we'll get into fact or sci-fi later.
Yeah, for real.
All
All right.
right, let's start with
we're-
Oregon.
Yeah, we're starting off with Oregon. So centuries ago, when it was known as Indian Bay was the area, many, and I don't know how to say this, Slets Indians, Slits Indians vanished into the
Silts.
waters, vanished into the waters when they were pulled from their vessels by giant tentacles. One occasion, a chief sent his warriors across the lake to win the heart of a maiden. And as the warriors came to the center of the lake, the water began to boil and bubble, and the great tentacles arose from the water and pulled the men down below into the murky depths. So I think that this was kind of like a lore of the area, because these Indian tribes were going down to the shores to do things like fish and other things in this area. And so I think that this particular time we kind of have one of those like tall tales almost of like the dangers of going into the middles of the lake or places that you don't know, to be wary of the stuff and the nature that's out there. I don't necessarily, this tribe in particular didn't have like a deep seated like history about the lake monster in this area. Like I said, I think it was just more one of those passed down oral traditions of, hey, there's something out there. We don't know what it is because it's just tentacles that are coming out.
Tentacles are dangerous, baby.
I was thinking about this the other day. Like, you read about like before the West came over and settled the United States, like, and I don't know how much this is like hippy dippy nonsense, but it's fun to think about. Like, they talk about how like the Native Americans were so like in tune with nature and so in balance with nature, and like, you know, that you could barely walk through the rivers because they were just teeming with fish. Everything was full of life. And then you get like technology and industrialism comes over, and it just all kind of like almost like goes into, it almost like subsides or goes into hiding. So I'm wondering if like, if you have like this landscape just full of balance and life, and people know how to live off of it without over extorting the resources or whatever, maybe that is better conditions for these types of creatures, right? Like
Absolutely.
if you have this almost like echo effect of like life creates life, creates life, creates life, and it's just so plentiful. Why not, there be a more of a presence of something that we're unfamiliar with as like modern urban development
Well, and I think
people.
part of it is like respect for them too, right? So these people, what they had is respect for this water. That's realistically what these oral traditions were teaching, is what about respect for your environment. And I just don't think that that's something that we have anymore as a society. So of course it was a much fostering and better environment because it was people who were respecting of what was going on around, which we don't have anymore.
Yeah, it's like it was like a mutual
Mm-hmm.
relationship. It wasn't like, hey,
Yes.
let's like see what we can manifest from these resources. It's like, let's see how we can like live in harmony with these.
Yes, exactly.
So anyway, I'm gonna do a
Love
bong
the
rip
land.
and like listen to the Grateful Dead now, I guess. So
No, I
love
think
that.
it's something that's of a great importance. I don't think it's even hippy dippy bullshit. I feel like, especially nowadays, I think more and more people are understanding the significance of living with the land and how they were able to sustain themselves. We can't sustain ourselves these days, most of us. Only people that are
I
often,
can. I got a Taco Bell.
you know what I mean? Like,
sustain off
people
the
are
Taco
kind of
Bell.
moving more and more towards trying to live off the land and being self-sustainable. But that was the original way with the indigenous peoples of this land.
Yeah, let me just throw this out there because I've been thinking about it. I don't know, it kind of relates to it, but like I think about like if you think of like all of like natural order and natural law like in a tube, right? And like every cinch on that tube is some sort of technology that's kind of like manipulating natural order and natural law to the benefit of like humanity or whatever. If it's a tube, if the technology represents, if the cinch in the tube, the bandwidth, if you will, of all this, and you squeeze it to manipulate it to a human being's benefit, it's gonna come up down the road in like that shortcut is gonna bubble up somewhere else down the road. Does that make sense? Or am I
Absolutely.
crazy?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I
Yeah,
think
I
this
understand
kind of
that.
sort of has something to do with what we're talking about, but
I
I've
think
just
it
been
does.
thinking about that a lot lately and figured I'd throw it out there.
I think it does. It has to go
Interesting.
somewhere. There's still that energy that's there. It has to go somewhere. It's going to be pushed, I think, towards negative or a positive.
It's like
It's
the whole
Final
there are no
Destination. You can't outrun your
shortcuts,
destiny.
only trade-offs kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
To be fair,
Also,
the things that have shortcuts and are easy in life are the things that are never worthwhile. The things that are worthwhile are the shit that takes, a really long time to get and it's hard and difficult to do.
then there
No
you
such thing as a
go.
free lunch.
Then you can look at it from that wide of a scale.
Joe
Building.
5D, that's not woke.
Oh, don't woke me. Oh, I should mention now that the Oregon version of the Devil's Lake Monster is the most popular version that you will come across for those that feel like doing their own research.
Yeah, and not only that, but I feel like out of all of them, it's also the most popular because of the Oregon area and how their people specifically really enjoy the cryptid lore around there. So you have a lot of information about what's going on in that area because Oregon really likes their cryptids.
It's true.
Yeah, but you know what? I will say this: every time I meet someone from the Northwest, and I'm like, "Oh my God, you're from up there," and I ask them about Bigfoot or something, and they're just like, "Dude, you're drunk. Shut the fuck up." It's not. They are not interested in talking to me about.
Not
Bigfoot.
all of them. No,
I don't know what
not
that's
all of them.
about. It's
That's
usually
awesome.
smug hipsters that moved to Austin from that part of the country that are not open to that.
Are you?
That's what I chalk it up to.
I'm not here to talk. I'm here to talk beers and
I want to listen to
country
Yola
music
Tango,
guitars.
not you talk about Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, let's
Kari,
get into
take
it.
it away.
All right. So, on March 4th, 1950, Maribel Allen, the teenage daughter of a local sheriff's marshal, discovered a strange carcass that had washed ashore on the beach west of Devil's Lake. The carcass, which the locals dubbed as Old Harry, was described as weighing about 1,000 pounds. That's like a ton. 22 feet long in size, and the body of a cow, approximately 9 tails and hair all over the body and legs. Though there are plenty of ideas as to the identity of the carcass, its identity still kind of remains a mystery. One possibility is something called a globster, which is a generic term applied to an unidentified organic mass that wash up on oceans, beaches, and lakes. And a lot of the time, it's like what was just described, where it's just kind of this unrecognizable mass of flesh and hair, and it's very, very strange.
Do you think that's because something like digested something and maybe like spit it back up, and that's
I
what you're
literally
seeing?
that was
like an aquatic hairball.
at the end of this.
Like an
I
owl
put
pellet.
yeah, I put it as a question at the end of this paragraph. Could this be some kind of sea creature vomit?
Or
It's like half digested food.
a Thunderbird or a bat squatch pellet.
Right.
Ooh.
Ah.
Or what if it's, maybe some type of big thunderbird and they had the carcass in its talons and then it fell out over the lake and then washed across shore. You know what I
Maybe.
mean? I feel
But
like
why
there's
has
so
it
many
got a bunch of
possibilities for
feet?
this one.
Like, why has it got like
Yeah, I
9
like that.
feet and 9 tails or
See,
whatever?
to me, that thinks like owl pellet. Like it makes me immediately think of like what somebody would find in an owl pellet. You find feet and bones and hair because that's the stuff that doesn't get digested.
Right. That makes sense.
Mm.
Damn. I like that you did your own little sci-fi work though, in the same.
You cut off there.
That you did your own little like sci-fi work in the same slide. You're like, well, it could be this.
Well, just
Came
hang on
prepared.
for the next slide.
Hang on for the
I don't.
next one.
I don't want to be the. Can we go to the next slide as I'm speaking here? Oh, never mind. I thought that was the next
So
slide.
Kari.
Shut the fuck up.
Okay, so on the 13th of January of the third age of the year 3019, the watcher in the water was disturbed, and Boromir threw a stone into the dark waters. Moving towards the shore from the southern end, it attacked the Fellowship. Just as Gandalf managed to open the doors of Durin to enter Moria, and it grasped Frodo Baggins by his ankle and attempted to drag him by his foot into the water. Samwise Gamgee slashed at the tentacle holding Frodo, causing it to release him, and the party retreated through the doorway, followed by several tentacles fingering the cliff wall.
Ew, I don't like that at all. That sounds awful.
The creature possessed great strength. After the escape of the Fellowship into Moria, the coiling arms held the enormous stone doors shut and somehow uprooting the trees which grew on either side, barring the doors. When Frodo asked Gandalf what the creature was and if there were more, Gandalf revealed that he did not know, but speculated they must have been drawn to the deep places beneath the misty mountains. And then silently he noted to himself that it had grabbed Frodo first, possibly suggesting the influence of the One Ring.
I feel like we should have like Led Zeppelin playing in the background as you're
Right.
reading that. Yes, I didn't know this was a history podcast, Kari. I'm
Wow,
glad
yeah,
you
that's
found
amazing.
That
was
in
great.
the records of
What a
time.
great sighting. Yeah, that's proof
Yeah, I
right
thought
there.
I was when I was thinking about this gelatinous thing with all the tentacles. I was like, wait a minute.
I've
You
seen
know, I
that
will say
before.
the more I dig into this stuff, the more I start to realize, and I'm sure I brought it up before, but like I think that like Lord of the Rings, like that world is way more accurate at one time
Yes.
than we like to
Yeah.
pretend it is.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
It's like
Before
that's
times.
history.
Couldn't
Well,
agree with you more.
I think, and those who have listened to Toddy Waba, probably not most of you guys, from the very start. I think since episode 1, I feel like we've always alluded that literature and movies,
Hollywood
TV
movies.
shows, any of it,
What culture is now is
Pop
carrying.
culture, yeah.
There's just platforms now.
there's seeding.
It's the same
There's-
story. It's just bigger
there's
platforms.
more-
Yeah.
Man,
There's
I
two
love
things
that
to that. I think there's like what do people respond to, like what's resonated with people like organically, and then there's also like the whole predictive programming angle too. So it's just like kind of a little junction of both of those ideas. But it's like if you were to write some story that like just was full of crazy shit that like didn't really catch fire with the culture, it probably doesn't have much like weight in the real genetic memory of human
It's not
beings.
informed by that memory.
The mythology, by
Yeah.
the Akashic record. Yeah.
It has to have some of the
Mhm.
DNA of humanity.
Right. Right.
Bobby was right on point with the Akashic records.
Mhm.
Nice.
Akashic record.
Brownie points for you. 2 brownie points.
Mm.
2
Okay,
points.
so I hate to be the voice of disappointment here, but to be completely honest, I searched high and low throughout the annals of the internet to find any kind of modern day account of this creature, and they are not a plentiful at all. And I think it's very interesting to bring up. Think about how we just described this monster and
Thank
how
you.
the local community is embracing it. So it goes back to that thing of like, well, it's kind of a local lore. We might as well like kind of celebrate it as like a town mascot, maybe bring in some tourists, whatever. It's a cheeky, fun little novel thing. So they built this 13-foot high, 18-foot long sculpture that sits at Regatta Grounds Park near the Devil's Lake. It's comprised of 90% recycled material, including steel, round bar, and retread tires. Commissioned with artist Heidi Erickson to create this. And I mean, this is really like the only remnant of the modern take on this. Like there's the history there, and you can go and you can see like little signs that talk about all the things we just mentioned. But like there's if someone's seen something, it's few and far between, and it's not being reported to this day. So I like the way that this cheeky nonsense kind of like keeps it alive, but it also kind of speaks to the fact that there's not much else going on with that. And in addition to that, this looks nothing like what is described in the accounts,
Any fashion,
historical accounts.
Like
It's
a
like,
freaking dinosaur.
no, we
slash
can't make
dragon.
it like this big, scary Kraken creature. Let's make it like Puff the Magic fucking Dragon.
It does look like a weird Puff the Magic Dragon. I
Only
agree with
like
you on that one.
a metallic cyborg version of it or something.
Where
It's a
was
cool
Puff the
sculpture,
Magic
don't get me
Dragon
wrong,
set?
but
They wanted
that?
to make it cute so kids would take pictures.
Where
with
was
it.
Puff the Magic Dragon set?
In a land,
the land of
far
Honolulu.
away. Oh, there you go.
Okay. I thought it was like in like
The land of Honolulu. I'm gonna brush up on
Probably
my.
not, honestly,
fallen
is
man.
I meant like the real, you know, when like he comes into
Yeah.
real life.
Oh,
In the is it the
I
movie?
don't-
I think in the movie like
I
he
don't know, I
comes
haven't watched
into
the
real
movie
life.
that very
Cincinnati.
well.
I'm gonna go with
There's a movie?
Cincinnati.
Okay, yeah, and it's like rural somewhere, so that's why I'm asking because it could be like somewhere near.
That's dope.
Yeah,
There's a movie. Where are you taking that?
Yeah. So yeah, again, you know, I don't. We'll get into factor sci-fi, but I think that this alone kind of speaks volumes. Like if it had the weight of a real creature with these consistent reports, these consistent descriptions all through the decades up to modern times, they wouldn't have resorted. I mean, this is just a theory. I feel like they would have tried to make a more like tentacly Kraken looking monster here, but it's like, no, we're gonna make a silly fun dragon, and we're gonna call
Dragon,
that
yeah.
Devil's Lake Monster of Oregon.
Two little teeth.
And I think that kind of takes credit away from the legitimacy of that in a weird roundabout way.
That sucks, but I do agree.
I
But you know,
agree,
it's like
actually,
that thing that you've talked about, Bobby, all the time is like these small towns really just trying to bring more tourism and things like that to their town. So in this case, they obviously don't really care about the not modern, but about the historical accounts. It's more about making it this cute little dragon.
Right.
To draw attention, to make it a tourist spot so that you, your kids, the whole family can come out and take a picture with this cute little dinosaur dragon looking fella who looks like his name is Timmy.
And
Well,
I'm not saying that like
native
this was
space
built in
station
like a
first.
cynical way to drive tourism. Like I think people kind of just get behind this symbol of the town naturally in a lot of ways. And I think on some level, obviously, it's like, well, it'll be cool when tourists come in and take their picture with this sculpture and, you know, post it on the internet and
Post
be
on
like, what's
social
that?
media,
And we drive
yeah.
more people to visit it and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's kind of an afterthought in this case, especially. I think they were really
And obviously, this
just
thing
trying
doesn't
to
swim. Look at the
create a fun piece of art.
Its proportions don't stand up to its swimming abilities. It's like short.
No, it
Not
literally
really.
doesn't look
That-
like it
that's
was
not
made
That
for
thing would
swimming.
drown immediately.
It's not
Yeah.
taking any canoes down.
Those feet are not webbed.
No.
It's a fucking metallic dragon.
It's a dragon.
Honestly, it looks like a
Really
metallic
nerdy
version
metal
of some
band.
type of Pokemon creature.
Oh, little Pokemon-y. Yeah, I give you that one.
So
Super-
let's dive. Sorry, go ahead, Bree.
No, I was just saying super Pokemon-y.
But all that said about my my skepticism with this particular creature, I mean, tentacles are one of those things in the cryptid world that a lot of times end up being a real creature. It's hard to fake tentacles. Tentacles, I don't think, are easily mistaken for things, more so than other things. So, I mean, you have the giant squid on the left. I don't know if that's a real picture of a giant squid, but we do know the giant squid is real.
I believe it.
And then the kraken is an offshoot of the giant squid, or just the octopus in general. And honestly, like, that's one of the easier mythologies for me to swallow is the kraken, because who's to say that, like, at some time in the, like, not so distant past, you know, people were sailing the seas a lot more often, right? There were seafaring people. We didn't get like airplanes and stuff. I mean, a giant octopus or squid like totally seems feasible to me. I think it was in the 90s that they acknowledged the existence of the giant squid. And
You know what?
it
We
wasn't
did
until,
an
like, the
episode
90s,
on
like,
it, and I wish I could
late
remember.
80s, early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, this is real." And I think that, like, that happens a lot too. And like, I mean, there's the giant panda, there's the gorilla. The whites didn't think gorillas were real for like a century.
It also
You know.
specifically happens in the ocean a lot because, again, we have the ocean is one of these
Makes
areas that is
sense.
not actually looked into. So more times than not, when we're looking at creatures of the water, they end up actually being some real version of something that's actually there. We just didn't know existed.
Especially the squid. I feel like every year or two, they're always like, "Oh, so this is the biggest squid," and then that
Yeah,
goes
is it-
into clips. And then it's like, "Well, wait, no. A couple years later,
The biggest
this
squid
is the
so
biggest
far.
squid."
Yeah, so
Yeah,
far.
so far.
Exactly. Like, who the fuck are you to say that this is the biggest one? Like, what if we explored like 2% of the ocean, something ridiculous like
It is
that?
something
Just pull that
stupid.
number out of my ass.
And
We
this
know
is
the
the other thing.
size-
The ocean is
like-
continually
it's like
changing. so
3%,
really, we've
yeah.
done nothing over and over and over again.
Right.
No, over and
Yeah,
over.
Like,
again.
there's no way to get ahead of the ocean.
Mm-mm.
But that's the thing,
Um,
though. The ocean has all these questions and possibilities, but do you think that lakes are the same thing?
Possibly. I think that water in general is what's the word I'm looking for? Like
It's the key to life. So it's like it's literally water is
Well,
a portal at this point. Like,
yeah, portal, something like that, like a channel for new, you know,
Mhm.
new things within
A
the spectrum. I
conduit,
think
a
water
conduit.
has
Yeah.
that's exactly the word I was looking for. I think
Conduit.
water
Yeah.
is a conduit for certain
Mhm.
things. I think maybe like if like our paradigm shift with nature, and let's say like let's just say pretend we subscribe to the fact that like human consensus is reality, but as soon as human consensus shifts, as soon as that paradigm shifts, new things manifest as a result of that. I think the water would be a perfect conduit for those new things to appear in. You know what I'm
That
trying
is
to say?
ancient metaphysical knowledge right there.
Mhm.
That's been
All right, I
based
just
in-
pulled that right on my ass.
That's been based
Oh,
Speaking
in
of which,
our-
ancient metaphysical demon creatures, the verboten monsters of the depths. We have the Cthulhu. How do you say it? I don't know.
Cthulhu.
I say Cthulhu.
Cthulhu, the old gods, if you will,
Choo-choo.
represented as a tentacled
Fuck,
monster
Bobby.
as well. So I think that the depths, considering how unexplored they are, how mysterious they are, and all the weird metaphysical, anomalous, magical things that can happen with water in general, you got yourself a cocktail for some tentacled monsters that no one wants to acknowledge that are real until they have to.
1000%.
Wow. My
Boom.
God. And I want to say, if you give me 2 seconds so I can
Okay.
confirm, but I'm
Okay,
pretty
confirm.
positive that all of our lakes that we're talking about today
Our
all
glacier
have-
lakes.
are all glacier lakes. They all go back to
Mhm.
that time.
That
So I
is
feel like
correct. Yeah.
so that itself, I think, gives us more possibilities.
Mhm.
because I mean there could be things like frozen in time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it's
then
interesting, but it's all of our 3 lakes are historically glacier lakes.
I love that both possibilities present themselves here. One, hey, what is this an enclosed lake where like evolution like did its own thing in this one specific region, kind of like New Zealand or Australia, that kind of thing? Or is it just that this lake is connected to all these underground tunnels and canals and shit where who knows what from the depths can like perk their little heads up from time to time, you know? It can go both ways.
Well, I think that we've talked about this before when we've talked about anytime we've talked about the dinosaurs on the channel. Realistically, there had to have been some things that survived that initial meteor that came and like, you know, blew up the earth or whatever. It didn't like scorch everything. Like there had to have been creatures deep underwater under these tunnels and things that were absolutely not affected by whatever it was that was happening. So who's not to say, like they say that all dinosaurs are extinct, but like if you think about it, they talk about like alligators and stuff. Like alligators are dinosaurs. They are technically have been around since that time. They were able to survive that.
Especially hundreds of miles below like normal sea surface. I mean, come on. Obviously,
it totally makes sense.
Touched. It could stay,
If they're
thrive.
Hundreds of miles? That's pretty warm.
If there is some remnant of the age of the dinosaurs, it totally makes sense that it would be an aquatic version of that. You know what I mean?
I think out of anything, the aquatic is the one thing I believe that survived.
Actually, with the comet in general, I mean, it obviously caused some fracturing in the plates. So you could have something that could be in the Jurassic timeline that survived super deep in a small area. And then once those plates fractured because of the impact, cause a stream, a lake, that species could theoretically swim or go upstream to that area and then survive in that new lake or that new river.
Hell yeah. Or like I think a few episodes ago we talked about that I think it was like those caverns in Vietnam that have its own like what is it like? It has its own like not ecosystem. It has its own like atmosphere.
Oh, we showed the pictures. It had its own like weather and stuff inside of it.
Yeah, it has its own weather, of course. I mean, who's to say? I mean, I feel like the ocean could easily be just as have these little isolated pockets just like that of its own.
Yeah, I believe that that's true specifically in Antarctica underground, that there's defrosted areas that like have like living life and maybe
very
possibly like
we should get in one of those little submarines and go down.
What do you call that? Like an eco pocket? Like
No.
an eco pocket? Yeah, maybe something like that. And I agree with you, but here's the problem with that, Bobby, that you can only go to so many certain areas inside of Antarctica, and you can't actually go to the areas where all these things like happen. Like you're
well, that's because it's the ice wall,
sanitized.
and they don't want us going beyond the ice wall to see.
I don't think it's the ice wall. I think that there's just shit going on down there that they don't want.
Tartaria or whatever.
No, Tartaria is apparently underneath us because of the mud flow.
Yeah. I'm just pulling weird shit out. Yeah.
We're just going down the conspiracy
guys, I'm not a flat
earther.
earther. I just think it's funny to talk about it.
I think
Wisconsin.
Okay, so now we're getting into Wisconsin. Again, I'm going to butcher any and all of the names being said in here. We're talking about the Nakota Sisoaks and Ho-Chunk tribes. So the Sioux and Ho-Chunk. So one of the earliest legends involving the creature of the Devil's Lake monster revolves around a Native American Indian chief who gathered together a group of young warriors to go across the lake one night, because on the other side of the lake there was like really there had like lots of plants and stuff, so they assumed that like the animals would be grazing over there, so it'd be a good place to go. There was a full moon and it reflected off the night and blackened the water, so the young men kind of like it was they were going across, it seemed like it was like they were traveling over like a black empty hole, but because the moon was lit they could see everything in front of them, just like not under the surface of the water. So suddenly, a flurry of tentacles ripped through the surface and capsized the canoe, and pulling and thrashing, and it terrified the men, and it ended up bringing them back down into the water. No one ended up surviving this ill-fated expedition, so I'm not sure why we have detail about what happened, because all of them died. But the people there said that people bear witness to it that were on the shore who weren't inside the boat, and they said that because of the full moon, they could see every single one of the tribe's members getting like ripped to shreds.
They heard their cries and their screams from the land.
And so now every year, to pay homage to the fallen tribesmen and to the beast, they have like a festival in the area along the shores where they like give offerings and stuff like that. Although today it's not like the exact same kind of thing, they still technically do a festival. It's kind of like that, but it's lost a lot of its meanings.
They used to give offerings, like straight up sacrifices.
Yeah, sacrifices and stuff to it. Yeah. So what's really interesting about it is this area was actually called like Spirit Lake, but the white people came in and they got confused about the translations, and so what they took as like a spirit lake, they thought it meant like a bad spirit, like ghost or like a demon,
a devil.
Which is why to this day it's called Devil's Lake. And it's funny because it's like the same thing kind of happened in Oregon, where they mistook the version of their language and butchered it, and so now all these places are called Devil Lake, when in reality all of them are actually called like Spirit Lake.
I think that like the mentality, and I'm speculating here, I think the mentality of the time was like, if it's not like the Christian God, it is a demon or a devil or something like that.
For sure.
Some sort of like pagan entity or something. So that would naturally translate or evolve into the Devil's Lake.
Yes, if it's a spirit, but not the heavenly spirit, a ghost, but not the
heavenly
ghost,
God or something. Yeah.
Which is crazy, because it's like, were these things? I don't know. It seems like that's the same for every place here, and it's interesting that then there are these creatures there. I don't know if maybe the white man did it.
We killed him with our Bibles, bitch. What?
Well, and we do have one more thing that happened in this area on Devil's Lake. So specifically, there was a time where it was a really hot summer, and the lake started to dry out so much to the point that it ended up being split in half with like a patch of mud inside the middle. And it's a well-known story about the indigenous people in the area that on this little patch between the two lakes, this monster ended up being like stuck in the area. And several of the tribe's members watched for days as this monster tried its best to get back into the water. And it's never quite said like what actually happened to it. But it is said that like when that happened, that there was like, it was there and they saw it, thriving around like a fish out of water.
And again, we have to consider like these might be known creatures now that they just didn't have a name for at the time, or they had never seen in their own little records.
The thing about it too is like the indigenous people of the area really took this as like a sign from like their gods that something was wrong, right? So the water was taken away from them, so their crops weren't as much. They weren't able to fish, even to the point where it was affecting this lake monster that they had there. So like Bree had said, they were literally doing sacrifices and having rituals and things in front of the lake to try to undo what had happened. Which at the time, we know now. It's just like, it's the climate, and sometimes things are hotter, sometimes things are colder, water evaporates and unevaporates, especially when you're talking about like these Wisconsin areas or some of these lakes. They are purely fed off of glaciers melting or rainfall in the area. So if you don't have anything else other than those two, like if you have a year that's really cold and the ice caps don't melt and you don't have any rain, that lake bed is going to dry up. It'll eventually come back because you're going to have glaciers that are going to defrost and rain that's going to happen. But there are absolutely periods of time where this place goes completely blank.
That's interesting.
Next in.
Well, it's the true.
It's the true.
It is the true.
All right.
1882.
In 1882. Two men were racing their rowboats across Rock Lake, heading towards what they looked like a submerged sandbar, which is kind of what you were just talking about, where there's like a mud bank where the water's split. So as they got closer, it reared like a snake-like head out of the water and opened its jaws. And they panicked and started yelling for like people on the shore to bring a gun and for help, and like chaos. A couple of people on the shore grabbed a boat and started rowing out there to help, but the monster like retreated and vanished. And then at around the same time, near Rock Lake, there was another lake called Red Cedar Lake and Lake Ripley. And both lakes were said to be connected by an underground channel, which the monster used to move between them. And for a week in 1891, a monster stalked the shores of Red Cedar Lake, dragging away animals from nearby farms, and their half-eaten remains would wash ashore later, kind of like what we were describing earlier. And the creature later emerged in Lake Ripley, where sightings were still being reported into the 1970s and 80s, and eyewitnesses described it having a large dinosaur-like head with a thick snake-like body and buggy eyes and greenish brown flesh. So that's pretty wild that like the lakes, like this stuff was all happening close to each other on the same week, and then that creature has ended up in one spot for the past 100 years or so.
So it has to be channels from one lake to the other. They're connected.
Right.
So that's like the same thing. Like it could be living in an area, but it's connected to if somehow there's a stream connected from one to the next lake, it could realistically be the same monster in all of these different lakes. Could even go back to Jake Smith talking about, I know there were things in Michigan actually for the same monster. So for sure.
Very interesting. Makes you wonder, like, is it like almost like a transport system? Right? It could be like running water in channels where, I need to get over here quickly. I'll take this channel, and it's like
I was saying that like water is portals. You know what I mean? Like I think about water almost the same way I think about the fabric of space-time. Yes, exactly.
What if
you would think that these caves and stuff, what if that's like a wormhole you go through and then you pop out in another area? I think that
doesn't that happen?
Have a lot more
that happens in Thor 2, right? How they escape Asgard is they fly through a cave. It's like a back entrance. Instead of being sent through the main portal, they go through a cave. So
there you
go. What if it's not even like an interdimensional manifestation? What if it is like once people begin to see and acknowledge these creatures in this weird, like psychic way, it like summons them to the surface, but they are physically down there. They're physically down there. It's not just like not even a tulpa. I'm saying like the opposite of that is like it's not like it just creates out of nowhere. It's like everything that we talk about lives beneath the surface.
CE5, but for the ocean. So if like you went out to
it could be like baited out or drawn out. Like kind of like how the Watcher in the water was drawn to the ring. Is drawn to evil. Like it's the same thing. Like it could be drawn by scent. It could be drawn by noise.
Just the human summoning or the human acceptance of the possibility gives it like some sort of weird motivation to like ascend to the surface.
That's when they say what you seek is always seeking you. So
damn, Enzo, that was right in front of everyone. Enzo got it.
I know he got it.
Oh my God, stop.
We should start an app.
No, but it is.
Oh yeah.
What it all relates down to, which I think you guys are talking about, is consciousness. Consciousness can vary, is so vast, but at the same time, it appears that you only have a certain area, like your vastness can be only so wide depending on your belief system. And how rigid it is depends on how flexible it can be. So if you're less rigid and you're more flexible, you may be able to listen to other stories. You widen that spectrum for your consciousness. But if you're so open and you let everything fly, you might be seeing all kinds of things that other people don't see. Of course, some people are going to say, because you're fucking crazy. but it could also just be that people that give themselves those boundaries that are so tight
Mm-hmm.
and so strong, they will never see what's actually there because they gave themselves those boundaries. So
Yeah,
when
no.
you start to knock those boundaries down, you start to see more, you start to experience more, and then you go into the Looney Tune lounge that most people will never see or acknowledge.
Yes.
You said Looney Tune Lounge. I got my
It
brain
is
going.
lounge.
No,
That's
but
how it works.
I agree with you, Bree. I think that that's the thing. Like, we've talked about this on the show before. That's like when Bobby got his crystal and then thought he saw a UFO. Wasn't the crystal? It wasn't that he saw a UFO. It was just the fact that he was giving himself permission to be
It's a
open to
permission
those things.
You're like, okay, I give it.
Exactly, a permission
Yeah.
slip. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not much has happened since then, but okay.
No, exactly nothing. But hey, but you tried.
Wisconsin.
Let's talk about these photos from Derek Mayoleth.
Derek Mayo.
This one was taken in 2010, and I believe he has a blog called Devil's Lake Wisconsin.com. I don't know if he's the only
Ooh.
blogger on there, but he has a lot of articles.
Probably not.
He's kind of seems to be the go-to like guy that's still kind of commentating or documenting this stuff.
Mhm.
And he went to like he legitimately seemingly thought, I like his attitude is very like, isn't this fun? I like that about it. But it's like he's like, I swore I was taking a picture of a log, and then I started to upload it to the internet, and people were like, no, that's the monster, and who knows, maybe it is. But I'm gonna go ahead and say that this one is in fact
like a log.
Yeah, this one's
a
giving me
squiggly
log.
Like, even if you look at those trees in the background, they look like if you had kind of a one that was weathered by water and like all decrepit in the lake, it would kind of look all curvaceous like that.
If
Yeah.
it was from like away far and the photo was a little bit tinkered
Yeah.
with, I might believe it, but because it's so clear.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you want to say this was a monster, what is this? The head on the left, and then like, I don't know. It
Yeah,
just
what
really
gets me
looks like
is the back of it is very
so
specifically like out
majestic.
of the water. I think if the log was maybe turned the opposite way, it might be a little bit better. But yes, the way it's coming out of the water that makes it look like a log.
Yeah, so even he kind of cheekily like acknowledges this, but
Well, good for him.
and
Finally,
then
somebody's doing it.
yeah, I mean,
And not
whatever.
just being like,
God
yeah,
bless
it's
him.
real. At least
We
he's
need
like,
someone to
hey,
be
I don't-
documenting the Devil's Lake in Wisconsin. So here's another. Can we go to the next slide?
Yes.
This one's, I guess, a little more interesting, but not quite that much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the original photo that was taken in the park's like South Bluff. And he didn't really
Interesting to
notice
note this
anything.
was 7 years later.
It's beautiful.
Right.
Okay.
And again, another one of these situations where like he had like not even noticed it until he was about to share it online, like even after he edited the photo and everything. Just to read directly from the blog, I'm in going back to correct the image, I realized it wasn't an ordinary flaw. It's something created by, or it's not something created by the dirt or something on the glass. By zooming in, I could see it looked much more like a shadow of something just above or below the water plainly. I snapped two shots just a few moments apart. In the second photograph, the shadow had gone. So can we go back to the other photo real quick? The one before that.
Jumped the gun.
So it's basically like, oh, you guys can't see my pointer. Like you can barely even notice anything. But if you see that tree kind of in the center left, kind of
yeah,
round.
I wonder if you guys can see mine. It is
Yeah, right in there. Okay, so go to the next one. And I mean, this is a stretch. I mean, it's quite literally the shape of a log. But it's interesting because one, he said it was gone with the second snapshot, like it seemed to like have like left or something. And if I'm thinking like these kayaks, what are kayaks, like 5 to 6 feet long? So, I guess they're longer than that.
No, a bit longer than that.
Maybe 7 to 8 feet long, a kayak.
Yeah, 7.
Just depends.
Yes.
And then I'm guessing that this creature or this blob is like maybe 20 to 30 yards away. I'm not doing the math, but I'd say that thing is probably 2 to 3 times the size of a kayak. If I had to
It says
guess.
it's twice as long and twice as wide.
Yeah.
Right.
It's about
So
4 feet wide.
So like a little boat.
Yeah.
Kind of on par. Kind of on par.
but then we can zoom in even more.
Oh shit. Oh my god.
And this
That's
is like
some
one of those
fins.
rods. This is one of those rods that Bree loves. It's
Yeah,
a
this is
water
one of Bree's
rod.
rods.
Bree's rods? What?
Bree
Yeah.
loves rods.
Bree loves
Uh,
rods.
She likes big ones.
Exactly. Yeah, this looks like it could be just like a large fish to
Bree's
me.
big rods.
It's not.
It could be
giving
so many
me-
things.
It could be just
But
a
again,
shadow
like-
of the area. Maybe a plane went over.
I say no. I
tone-
think there's something there.
The tone of the guy's blog is just like, I don't fucking know. Maybe it's fun to think about. And I'm just like, hell yeah, I love this guy. He
Yeah, I
does
love
not
that
try to
attitude
make an
towards it, for
argument for
sure.
it. Yeah. So I mean, that is really, if you want to call this evidence of the Devil's Lake monster of
There it
Wisconsin,
is.
you're looking at it right there. And with that, I'm gonna go pour myself a cocktail. I'll be right back.
Do it. Give us the next one.
You know
Bree.
what? It's really difficult because it could be. We're looking at this from a very far. You have to remember this is from a super far
Yeah, it's
angle.
way big different.
I don't
distance,
think it's
but
a
I think
normal
that-
rod. If anything, it would be a giant eel.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I
There's
feel like
still
that's the
this
problem
area.
though, because it's so far away and it's just a little shadow and not like a concentrated photo of like what they were trying to get. And because we only saw it for one frame, I think that it could literally be anything. It could literally be an airplane above and it's the shadow of the airplane. Like literally.
It's not.
But it could
It's not.
be.
No, it can't be.
It could.
Why can't it be?
It can't be because we just looked at the original. We just looked at the first photo with all the kayaks.
Yeah.
The fucking
still-
airplane
Do you know how
is
high the
not
airplane
low
could be?
enough. The
How do you
airplane
know?
is not low enough to cast a shadow. There's no way in hell, unless it was like a super low airplane and there's an airport that lands right
it could have
there.
been a cloud that did it though.
A
Like,
cloud that looks like the shape of a very
I
thin.
mean, it's
poop.
also the angle you're looking
But
at the water. So.
Exactly. So here's the thing you have to understand, Brie. It's not that it's shaped exactly like that or anything. It's that the way that the clouds are casting down and the way the shadow is. Like I've seen that before. Specifically when driving over like mountains and stuff, you'll literally see like a weird dark area, and then you'll look up and be like, "Oh, that's crazy that the clouds are casting that much of a shadow in that area." So I'm not saying that it was specifically like something up in the sky that was the shape of a rod that's casting that, but I'm just saying like with the way the angle is, there's no way to say whether that's underneath the
I
water
think
or a
this is
shadow
a
on the
little
water.
Could
Okay,
you go
it's
back
a
to the
little-
wide shot?
Hold on. Let me unzoom on the mouse pad. Thank you, Macintosh.
Further back, the wider shot. See, it is kind of cloudy.
And they ain't no goddamn airplane. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing that.
I'm just saying it could be many
Look
of
at
things.
that.
I'm
Not
not saying
really.
that it's not
I know
something in the
it
water.
could be, but from this wide shot, there's barely any clouds. This is
Well,
a
the sun
beautiful
is
place.
coming from behind the camera.
I'm gonna visit here. Look at how gorgeous. Look at how
I think we should.
even all of
yeah.
this is so shallow. It's gorgeous. And this is right here. Boom. You can see it like, what is that? Turd in the water.
A turd.
turd.
Ew. It's a little turd in the water, isn't it?
All right, give us the next one. B.
We can't.
I'm back.
Baby's
From
back.
outer
Look
space.
at it. We're just ruling out the fact that it's obviously not an airplane because there ain't no goddamn airplane right here, and you can see it right here very clearly.
Oh, like a shadow of an airplane?
Yeah.
Ain't no goddamn shadow of an airplane.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Or a
Now, but
sunken
now we can
Like the
outrule
shadow of an
that.
airplane.
Now
some
we can outrule it.
clouds.
shadow of
Now
the
we
night.
can outrule it.
Shadow of the night.
Guys,
Now
do
we
you
can-
do y'all have a Costco membership?
I don't.
Oh my god, I can't stop drinking this Japanese tea. We should try to get sponsored
Oh.
so I get to drink it.
This
for
is
free.
Ooh,
like
okay.
a face, like a head. Maybe it's turning. Let's see.
I thought I saw fins when I first looked at it.
Look at it.
On the bottom left, it looks like a slight
Okay.
kind of
Wait, hold up.
You see
Oh,
where
yeah.
it dips down
It does seem
slightly?
to have a bigger like middle part, like a wider.
Like a
Mhm.
So that would be the tail of it. And then you got the head,
I'm
and it
seeing
looks
something
like
hurt my baby. Little her. I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't want to be a believer, but sometimes it is what it is. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
this has been a really fun analysis of a
Okay.
black streak
All right.
in a photograph.
All right, fine. We'll skip ahead.
We got to talk about it. I would use the word known very lightly
Loosely.
here, loosely. But you got the plesiosaur. This photo in the bottom left, I kept seeing, and it almost seemed like it was trying to like deceive the reader that this was the photo that was taken. But I think
Everywhere.
Oh,
everywhere. I'm like, nah,
Everywhere
this looks.
it says that is an actual photo that someone took, and we all know that's not what it is. But
And I can't find any real like source of that photo anywhere.
we're like,
But it's
this is an
everywhere.
actual photo of the bottom of the lake. I took it.
And then you got a old Nessie up there, or Champ, or Ogopogo. I mean, it's not the first. This isn't our first plesiosaur lake monster rodeo, if you know what I mean.
No,
Mhm.
exactly.
So
I'm gonna
there
say
are
this.
these. It's worth noting there are these motifs of these creatures in various lakes. It's not just one place, which I think is kind of ties the whole theme of this episode.
point of
about-
personal privilege.
Yes.
Obligatory. It's a bear.
Shut the hell up.
Thank you.
Tony is not.
Thank
It's
you.
in honor of Tony not being here. You had to say it's a bear. It's a water
My
bear.
point is, as easily dismissed and as lack of evidence as there is for these aquatic freshwater creatures, the descriptions are pretty fucking consistent, and that's got to count for something, I think.
Something.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait for us to get to Tahoe, Tennessee, because, man. All right. Are we done with the slide?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so now we are getting into the North Dakota area. So you have the Dakota people, the Secession.
What?
Say it.
Where?
What?
The Seceston, the Wapaton,
Yes.
and the Cuthend bands of the Dakotas were relocated to the Spirit Lake Reservation. Again, here we have another one, Spirit Lake, as a result of the 1869 treaty between the United States and the Dakota that established a reservation for those who had not been forcibly relocated to now South Dakota. The Dakota people phrase this thing as what is right there, Minwakan, which means
Niwakan.
spirit water, which again, when the European settlers got involved, they thought that it meant bad spirit, so they decided to name it Devil's Lake, just like the other one that we talked about. The Native American legend says that the creature was stranded in the Devil's Lake area after the last glaciers retreated. Again, this is another one of those areas where the lake is only funded by glaciers and rainfall. And because there was a glacier that was cut off from this area, what the native people were saying is that this creature was specifically stranded in this area, that it didn't have access to a way out through the glaciers, so therefore it was stuck inside of this area. And the stories were passed down about the snake-like monster, which were that the rumors of the monster were dwelling in the lake and would devour any of those foolish enough to go near it. And it was spread in tribal tales, with one particular story noting that during a battle between the Dakota and the Hawaii tribes, the creature supposedly devoured an entire army of Dakotans to avenge the Ojabans slain in the battle. So I love that this monster takes sides.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
It's hip. It knows the politics of the area.
I mean, that was like
It's a
a
thing.
form of like advanced weaponry at the time. Is like you
Hmm.
could just summon your own personal god to help you in a battle. You know?
Well, I think what's interesting
got a
about
water
it is,
thing?
I think that this breeds to the fact of the people who write history are the winners of history. So, of course, if the Owahi tribes were the ones who won, they can go out and say this story because literally no one's going to be known the wiser because they're the ones who survives, and they're going to tell us what happened. So I think that's specifically with that part of the story. That's one of those, like, they were adding a little special sauce on the end there to be like, yeah, we're real powerful. Even monsters protect us.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I never thought about that. It's like, you know, how we talk about cautionary tales at nauseum for like children to stay out of the woods, but like, what if you started this rumor for your own tribe to say, hey, don't fuck with that tribe over there. They have a fucking water creature that will destroy you.
Avenge
and we
them,
don't have
exactly.
a water creature, so we should not.
Or
we should
it's
not
them
try
saying,
to
"Don't
impose
fuck
on
with
their
us.
land."
We have a water monster."
Right,
and that's what
right.
that's what I mean. Yeah, I think that it was the story was a way to. I think that what they said is true. Like, they obviously beat this tribe, but I think that that's like what we see. With
It's almost like the
written by the
disinfo,
winners.
the disinfo theories we see with the UFO stuff right now is like, is it military or is it? And we're just, you know, painting this picture of,
how dare you, Bobby? It's all
you
real.
know, alien crafts to throw off the enemy in some way, or like, is it the enemy's craft, but we don't want to admit that they have technology that we don't? You know, it's that same kind of thing that kind of I think resonates in different ways and different lenses and contexts through history with different warring tribes.
No, absolutely.
Oh my God, the
Propaganda.
real life country is ancient tribes.
What?
For sure. All right, give us the next one, Brie.
Yes, Mark Trabian, October 21st.
Aye. So, one of the earliest accounts from the North Dakota area comes from the New York Sun on October 21st, 1894, and it reads, in part, all descriptions of the serpent agree that it has alligator jaws and glaring red eyes. Its tail is about 80 feet long and appears in August at about sunset. The red glare of the sunset sky is often reflected in the eyes of the serpent like mirrors, and flashes of red light that go darting here and there as the serpent turns its head strikes terror into the hearts of those who see it. The serpent moves slowly along about half mile of the shore, and in the course of a day or two makes its way around the lake. At times it lashes the water furiously with its tail and leaves like a simple single wake behind it. Like, it's if it's not splashing around, it's very like elegant and glides.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it further describes the appearance. Its color is a slimy green, and it's easy to trace the waves of motion that begin at its head and follow along its tail. 3 or 4 distinct waves being in evidence at the same time, which is kind of the same as those plesiosaur-looking things with the 4 flippers.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say that actually that specific description sounds a lot more like the Plesiosaurus whatever thing than most of them.
It has enormous ragged fins on its side and horny substances that project from its jaws. Giggity.
Ooh, okay.
Or directly behind them and trail along in the water. So it could be like a tail with this.
Okay.
Yeah. But which, when it's angered, they stick out in a horrible bristling attitude. So when it's like agitated, it sticks up like spines on a hedgehog or something. Yeah.
Keep going.
Its scales sometimes glisten and sometimes lie close to its back, so they simply look like normal snake skin, but when it feels threatened, they'll stick up. Okay. Next slide. Actually, no, not next slide. I can do it on this one. So in July of 1895, the Bismarck Tribune published a story in the same area. Go back. I was on the wrong bit.
Go back.
Yeah.
There you go.
Published a story which told of a fisherman, that's that guy there on the boat, who reportedly hooked the monster and got towed on a high-speed joyride around the lake. And then I put questions here. Do we think this could be like a big old trout or a gator? Or,
a gator?
I mean, this is something strong enough to pull a boat at speed. So
yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, even you don't really hear about that even a lot inside of the ocean, and they got big tunas and shit, and you don't see them dragging people's boats around. So that has to be a pretty big fucking thing to be doing something like that, I think.
I think so too.
And a gator in Dakota?
No, it's Jerry and the Moon.
Yeah, I tried to cover it, but why is he always Asian looking?
Oh, Brie.
Hey, you're supposed to be the most politically correct one on the
Brie.
show. You come out with us with those fucking hate crimes.
Is that
I think that was a hate.
I don't
crime,
know. I
yeah.
don't make the fucking rules.
That was a hate
okay?
crime.
Well,
All right, go ahead, Kari. Next slide.
leave it to innocence. I had no
Okay,
dinner.
so
I didn't know.
in the July
I didn't know you couldn't
21st,
say Oriental
1915 issue of the Grand Forks Herald, they published the accounts of a mass sighting with a number of eyewitnesses reporting their accounts separately from one another, including E.M.
Okay.
Lewis, a businessman who had sighted the creature from a train, and Chaz Pilbury, another well-known businessman.
Chad Pillsbury.
Chaz.
Okay.
Another witness was also Captain Walter Firstenow of the police force, who was accompanied by his wife.
Oh, he's a fucking police officer.
So what they saw was very similar, like a very long-tailed, green, scaly creature
in India.
along like the shores of the lake, and I'm guessing that all these people must have been on the train and separately saw this thing out of the train.
Yeah, like as it was going over like a bridge or something. Exactly.
So
like you got
that's
the
why
line there, yeah.
that's why I used the same lake and just added the bridge, because it's 30 years later or 20 years later.
Mhm.
And by this time, it had been about 50 years since the land was like in the treaty with the Dakotas. This land was taken. So it's been about 50 years of development. So there would have been train, it makes sense of as train tracks and all that jazz.
Industrialized.
Yeah, it was industrialized.
The Industrial
and
Revolution.
people traveling around. So it makes sense that there would be people there to
No,
witness it.
For sure.
Yeah, that's what they saw, and then they all reported it to the Grand Forks Herald in 1915.
So that's one of the things too about all these. You tend to have a lot of these sightings in these area of the big newspaper time, and the big reason for that is because they really didn't have anything better.
I
They
didn't.
just needed things to talk about.
Yellow journalism.
Mhm.
It's what sells newspapers.
What are you laughing at, Brie? At the way it slid over?
Yeah, what was
No, did you add that?
No. It was like
With
a
the
transition.
drums? I
We didn't hear drums.
I heard drums.
didn't see it.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so this slide, I didn't have any. There wasn't really any stories. There was some articles written in 1941 in the Minneapolis Star Journal that recounted the mythology to date of the story. A lot of it, mainly the Dakota story that Jamie just kind of recounted. But yeah, there was renewed interest in 1941 via the newspapers, which was kind of interesting. I don't know if it really links to like renewed surge of sightings. I couldn't find anything on that, but it's interesting that it suddenly got brought back up in the media.
Again, because I think that it's of the time. Like that's when these stories were really popular. There wasn't a lot to report on, so a lot of these newspapers were just filling up space and time.
See, they saw it.
Yeah,
I didn't see it.
You didn't see the drum roll?
I didn't hear it.
Drum roll.
I saw like the page like blur and transition, but I didn't hear
No,
anything.
it was the drum roll, and it was like, and then it went to the next
No, I'm on
one.
mushrooms.
That's hilarious.
all right. Next
All right, give us the next
slide.
one, Brie.
Oh wait.
God, you did it again. You did it again. Can we roll that beautiful bean footage?
No, we're done.
You didn't even play the whole thing.
Damn.
That's the whole thing.
This week's movie recommendation is the 2006 is The Host from Korea. That's how my grandpa used to say it.
Wait,
Korea.
wasn't that like remade, or like there was another one called The Host that came out a couple of years ago
Probably the name.
that got like best
nothing
Oscar,
big.
best picture at the Oscars or something?
No,
Well,
What was that?
no, not that I'm
Parasite.
aware
That was
of.
Parasite.
Parasite.
Parasite is the same director. I was just about to
Ah.
mention that.
And it
Bong
was
Joon-ho,
fucking awful.
South Korean filmmaker. This is one of his first. I think it's his first feature-length film. As the host is kind of a kaiju water monster.
Right.
What is kaiju
Really,
mean?
Kaiju is like
big
Japanese
giant
monster.
Japanese monster. Yeah,
Japanese.
so Mothra is one.
or like Godzilla, or like
Mhm.
Mechagodzilla, or Son of Godzilla.
Pacific Rim has kaijus as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
big giant monsters from the ocean.
Yeah.
Old
Oh,
gods.
man, that was
It's
trash.
kind of in the spirit of those. However, what's really cool about this movie, it does have some dated CGI, but it doesn't bother me that much because it's so fucking awesome. And for what it's worth, like you look at monster movies like Jaws, where you don't really see much of the monster, at least till like maybe the end of the second act, and like, even then it's still kind of lurking in the shadows. Like this movie just shows this this creature just chasing Korean people down the street and destroying things, and it's really, really good. And I'm not a huge fan of this genre, but I remember being at a Halloween party in like maybe 2008, 2009, and this was on the TV, and I was just like watching it the whole time. I was
We're
like, I don't care,
obsessed.
that's the party.
Yeah.
I just like really do it. But yeah, the director actually he directed Snowpiercer as well, which is also really good. Kind
The
of.
movie or the show?
Is that the one on the is Snowpiercer? Is that the one about the train and they're in the train in the snow? I don't know why, but I have not on my own accord watched that movie 12 times, and it's not like it's just randomly on, and then I'm just like I'm there, and I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. It's actually low-key a good movie.
How have I not known of this?
That movie is really badass.
It's about
There's
like,
a
like
TV
people
show
on a
too.
train, and like global warming happens basically. So the world is so cold that the only way these
all
people
the-
can survive is a train that moves in a big giant circle. It has like perpetual motion inside of it somehow, and then you start to learn the ins and outs of the train and like what's really going on.
Like
Wait,
all the different like class
it's a movie?
structure is separated on the train
movie.
and stuff. It's
a movie.
It's really, really good.
There's also a
Over here-
Netflix show with a couple of seasons.
Really?
I'm
It's a
here
movie.
is
directing
what we're
the
talking
host.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but watch the movie Brie. It is like the different class systems
Nice.
of the train, and then he gets to the front of the train, and then it's like, whoa, yeah.
Yeah, all the rich people
Okay,
live in the front of the
hold on.
train. All the poor people are in the back of the
Let's
train.
remind
You know,
me
like
to
real life.
Well,
Yes, it's low key actually really good. Like I said, I've never put it on
I enjoyed
myself, but I've had it on and I've watched the entire movie like 12 times.
Well, I
saw it when
guess
it
we're
came out a
recommending
while ago.
Snowpiercer on this episode. That's
Yeah,
nothing to
sorry.
do with
Also,
aquatic monsters.
Snowpiercer. Yeah.
But same director did The Host and Parasite, which won Best Picture a few years ago, which I enjoyed, but have no really desire to go back and watch a second time.
Parasite was awful.
Bobby, you might be able to help me with this. It's a movie that's kind of similar to The Host, but it came out before. It opens up with a scene like on a cruise ship, and a giant, like squid-like monster attacks the ship and
Deep Rising.
sucks somebody through a toilet.
Is it Treat Williams' Deep Rising? Is it like an
I
American
don't know.
movie?
I think
Is it
it was.
American?
I think it was American, but all I remember is I saw this when I was a kid, and this scene has stuck with me forever. But I've never known what movie it was. It was big tentacle thing attacks ship, woman's on toilet, shit scared and gets like pulled through the toilet.
I think that's Deep Rising, and that's a really good movie. I don't remember that specific scene, but the time period.
It was right at the beginning of the movie, like the initial, like
Yeah.
attack.
This was maybe late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, like 98, maybe 99.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I think I've recommended that movie on the show before.
I feel like you have,
Yeah, that movie's awesome. It's one of the great, like, forgotten 90s sci-fi sci-fi movies.
Like
but,
Deep Blue Sea.
Rising?
underrated.
yeah, then there's Leviathan is another good one of that. That's from the late 80s, early 90s.
Actually, speaking of Leviathan, there's a podcast called Leviathan, and it is so fucking good. It's very well produced. It's literally like you're watching a movie, but without watching a movie. Like the people do the voices and the sound effects. It's like that, and it's about like
What's it about?
It's about an underground city, Leviathan, and the people who live in it and shit. It's fucking
Fuck
wild.
yeah.
So it's like an audio drama.
It's an audio drama. It's exactly what
I
it is.
love
like
a radio
old
play.
school audio drama called Leviathan, and it's really good. Like really good.
Might have to check
What's
that
the
out.
show
That
we
sounds-
when I go to bed
called
tonight.
again? No, what?
Snowpiercer. Piercer.
Snowpiercer.
It's on
Check-
Netflix.
And watch the host too.
Check out the TV show version because it's like this.
And
It basically they took the plot of the
TV.
movie and really fleshed it out and expanded it. And
But you have different things on TV that I don't.
this was like a Netflix original. So
I don't know. I've
Okay.
never seen the TV show part, but all right.
Is it
all
the
right, Bree.
Leviathan Chronicles?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. The Leviathan Chronicles.
And that's a
Okay.
podcast.
That's based on a book, but I guess they made a
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it was based on a
audio
book, and
podcast. Okay.
it's like a
Right
whole
on,
thing where it's like the
Abyss.
characters
That's a
are talking,
throwback.
and it's like really
Those
well
are the
written.
actual podcasts that make it in the world.
Well, and it was a guy who was writing and producing all the episodes, and then like 2 years in, his wife got sick and died, so he took a year off, and then he came back and finished it.
Damn.
Wow.
this is
Yeah, so it's
awesome.
like it's really good. You have to really pay attention because there's like a lot of characters and a lot of shit happening. There's like jumping on the back of motorcycles and teleporting. It's crazy.
Polar Bear and Nightmare. Is Kari talking about Deep Rising? I think it's Deep Rising. I'm pretty
think so.
sure.
It's deep, right?
that sounds familiar. But I mean,
Yeah,
I
that
was
movie's
like
badass.
8 years old when I saw this clip. So
There's
long,
something
long
with the
time ago.
monstery things, right? That they just came out with, and they did another one.
What?
And Darcy wanted us to
That's-
see that when you guys were in town at my
that's-
house, and he wanted us to see it in the theaters.
Monstery things. What? I don't know.
Remember when Darcy
Just-
wanted us to
I'm
go
trying to
see
think.
it?
Just what came out in like May.
And it was like, oh no, that was like Undead Rising. Maybe that was it. Maybe that was it. Maybe it's Undead Rising, or maybe it's the same thing.
I got no
I
idea
can't
what y'all
remember.
talking about.
Dead Rising.
Well, I'd like to recommend The Host from 2006. It's a
All
Korean
right.
movie.
Take us
We're into it.
home. Take us home.
Going home to Factor Sci-Fi.
Whoop, whoop. I will go first. I'm going to full blown middle bitch this one. I think that there's
Respect.
it's too flippy floppy on both sides. You have like the inconsistencies with all of the different sightings and stuff like that, but then at the same time, like, how is it that all of these Devil's Lake were all called Spirit Lake and were mistaken by white people, now called Devil Lake, and all of them have lake monsters, and all of them have Native American lore? It's just too many coincidences for me to say it's a no sci-fi. I think that there's definitely something about it, but I'm more leaning towards the idea of it being like a living dinosaur that we don't have classified, that, you know, that has been around for a long time. So I'm gonna have to full blown middle bitch it on this one.
Right on.
Bibby?
I'm right above you, Jamie. I might as well go. I'm gonna go somewhere between sci-fi and middle bitch
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of like spiritual or like more like less materialist accounts of this. Like, for
And
example,
more
the
just
Native
word
Americans.
of mouth, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, by modern, like, we don't. If I'm going like straight scientist, like based on the research we did, like I'm probably gonna go hard sci-fi. But I think that this is one of those things that, like, as the people that are open to seeing these types of things kind of die off, or like the zeitgeist or the paradigm of humans shifts away from some of these types of monsters, like, it's one of those things that kind of dies with it. Like I said, I think it's one of these things that you have to summon through your own belief, and I don't think there's enough juju there to make it happen. So I think there are such things as like lake or water monsters, but by today's standards of what we would like capture in a flesh and blood, you know, specimen and put it in a laboratory, I don't know if that's really feasible at all with this kind of stuff. But that's not to say at one time it wasn't real, and it wasn't real to the people that believed in it. So I'm going to go like maybe a 3, I guess.
Okay, that's respectable. All right, Kari.
I'm maybe somewhere between middle bitch and fact, because I feel like it started off in native lore, but then you've got like the white man comes in and the sightings continue, and people are still seeing like similar kind of things and having similar kind of experiences in the area. And when you think about like relations between
Yes.
the white man and the natives, it's not like the white people were going to go, right, we're going to take all of this mythology and believe it all. So
True.
the fact that separately, like in their own culture, they're seeing the same thing and then creating, or and then searching for definitions or stories about it and
And then
seeing
it
that it
leaks
matches
back
up.
to the Native Americans. Yeah.
Totally.
I don't think like they were inclined to immediately jump to that. So the fact that the
Like
descriptions,
they weren't making it up themselves. Yeah, I get what
Yeah.
you're saying.
like the descriptions don't all match, but they all saw something in these lakes.
Yep.
So I'm leaning. So I'll give it like a 7.
Okay. Bree?
I am going to piggyback off of Kari. I agree for the same reasons. I middle bitch it because it's hard to believe, but yet there's enough native lore and account to say that there could be something. And yes, when the European Americans came, they're not all going to jump on board with it because, like we touched on earlier, if it's not, the Jesus Holy Ghost, it's evil or whatever. And I also think that sometimes things come and they leave. I think that's like with everything, especially in the metaphysical realm. Things show themselves and then they disperse. And in this case, it's kind of strange that we have 3 places with all the same type of names. They all come from glacier areas. That there could have been something there. So I agree with Kari. It's like a middle bitch leaning towards a fact, but I don't feel comfortable saying that it's a fact because I don't 100% know that I believe it's there.
Yep.
Damn.
You said what I said, but better.
Ooh. Boom. All right.
Boom.
Any final thoughts of the episode before we all skedaddle on out of here to our beautiful Tuesday nights?
Yeah, quick plug if you don't mind.
Absolutely, please.
Just dropped a new episode of Not For Everyone podcast in honor of Paul Rubens, aka Pee Wee Herman, who just died a few weeks ago.
Oh, rip.
R.I.P. We covered the not great movie from 1999, Mystery Men, with Ben Stiller. It was a lot of fun though. So if you're into very questionable and offensive humor and grown men talking smack to each other, check out Not For Everyone podcast.
Right on.
So it's like us. We're a bunch of grown men talking smack to each other. No?
Yeah.
Mhm.
My final thought of the episode is
Jesus.
yeah, that was it. That's all I got.
I'm going
Kari?
to second that and just.
Vibes, Bree. All right, we love you guys. We'll see you guys next time we're on the internet.
I thought you had something to say.
No, that was it. That was
Just
all.
this,
It was the sound, and then Kari piggybacked.
I miss Tony Baloney. That's my
You do
favorite.
miss Tony. All right. Anything else, anybody? Is that all?
Bye.
All right, Kari, ride us out into
Bye.
the sunset, please.